again we'll start with the third chapter in economics class 10, that is money and credit. Now this chapter has recently gained importance because of the recent demonetization drive that took place. So let's understand what is money and how it evolved. Previously, when there was no currency or no money in circulation, the only means of trade was exchange, and that exchange was in the form of barter system. That means, let's say here is person A and person B. So person A grows vegetables and fruits. So let's say he is a farmer and he looks after poultry. So he is working at a poultry farm. So what he would do, A would provide certain fruits and vegetables to B, and B in exchange of that would return some kind of poultry to A. So that was a kind of exchange that took place, and this exchange was known as barter system. So barter system basically talked about double coincidence of the wants. So there is a want that is arising from A and want that is arising from B, and both of these wants match with what they mutually provide to one another. So when that is a scenario, we can do barter system. However, if this is not the scenario, that means person B is looking for the fruits, but in exchange person A is not looking for chickens. That means person A will now only provide to person B, and there is no double coincidence of wants. As a result, what he will do, in lieu of what he has sold, he will take some amount, and that is what we call as money. So money in simple terms, we can say it's a medium of exchange. So when you are exchanging, that is money. Now since he has some X amount of money with him, with this X amount of money, he can buy something else that he needs for himself. So it might not be chicken, but it could be something else. So he can use this money somewhere else and buy another commodity. Why? So that is how you have the need for money that arose. Previously, the ancient societies were predominantly based on barter system, and since there was kind of more needs and more demands that started coming up, there was a need for money to come into circulation. Now what are the various forms of money? There could be two primary forms of money. The third one that we will talk about, we'll see how that has evolved in the recent days. Now the first one is the money in the form of cash. So any paper notes, coins that is in circulation would be known as a currency, and this is issued only by an authorized organization or an authorized body. Now let's say if I want to bring a currency into circulation, I cannot do so, but for a country like India, it is RBI that does so. So that's the Reserve Bank of India. Now the RBI brings into market the paper notes and the coins. So that's the first form, that is currency. The next form is deposits with the bank. Now let's say I am earning 10,000 and I have 1,000 extra that I have saved. Now this extra saving I can put into the bank, and on this what I deposit into the bank, I will get certain interest. So let's say I keep this money in my savings account for 1 year. So when I am keeping this money for 1 year, I would be getting some kind of interest. Now that rate could vary from bank to bank and year to year. So let's say if the rate is 5%, or let's say to simplify, the rate is 10%, that means towards the end, and 10% annually, that means in 1 year this amount would increase by 10%. So 10% of this would be 100. So after 1 year it would become 1,100 rupees. So that is how we understand or calculate the deposits. So deposits with the bank can be of two forms. So first is the demand deposits, and these demand deposits are withdrawn on demand. So whenever I need that, I withdraw that. For example, check. So check is an instrument which is a kind of demand deposit, and this is an example of check where you pay it to someone like XYZ and a given amount, say 1000, and that is how you work around. So it's not a physical money that you have in hand, but it's a kind of electronic money. It is a kind of money that would be transferred from one account to another, and that is what is known as deposits with the bank. Of recent, there has been a trend of digital economy. So through internet banking or e-banking, so you have bitcoins and so all these would be a kind of digital transactions. So check is still now outdated, and you have net banking that has come into way, or you have banking through wallets. So all these are the recent examples of deposits. Now what is the difference between a depositor and a borrower? Now this is a very important concept to understand. Let's understand this with a very simple diagram here. So what this diagram is trying to explain here is, I am say a depositor, I have 1000 rupees with me. So I deposit that 1000 rupees in the bank, and bank is paying me interest in lieu of the deposit that I have made into the bank, and that is at a rate of 3% annually. So every year I get 3% extra on the total amount that I have deposited with the bank. However, there could be a case where you are required to borrow from the bank. Now this borrowing can be for, let's say, construction of your house, to an agricultural farmer for a cropping season, or to establish a kind of small scale industry, or any other purpose. So you are kind of borrowing from the bank. So when you are borrowing from the bank, the money that the bank has, that the person X has deposited into the bank would keep that money, and this would be provided to the borrower. But when the bank is providing the money to the borrower, it is charging a higher interest rate as compared to the deposit rate when it is giving to the depositor. So the bank is giving say 3% to the depositor, but bank would be charging say 9% from the borrower. So if the borrower say borrows 10,000 rupees, he would have to pay an interest of 9% against the amount till he finally recoups the amount or deposit the amount back. So till that time he will have to pay 9% interest on the amount that the person has taken from the bank. Now this difference of the interest that the bank is giving to the depositor and the interest that the bank is taking from the borrower is the difference or the net income of the bank. So here the net income would be 9% minus 3%, and that would be 6%. So this bank, let's say, would be earning 6%, and that would be the profit for this bank. Now usually when you have a certain amount of deposit in the bank, banks are supposed to keep nearly 15% of the total deposit as cash, and this is because it would be required for withdrawal purposes from any other persons who are coming to the bank. So bank technically requires to keep around 15% of the total amount that the bank has as a cash in hand with the bank. So this is how we understand the function of the borrowing, how it takes place, and the role of depositor and the borrower. Now the next is the credit or a loan situation. Now credit or a loan situation, as I said, could arise due to various reasons. For example, if I am looking to buy a house, I am looking for higher education, I am looking for agricultural crop, or to set up an industry, or for health purposes. So all these could be the reasons where you might be looking for a credit or a loan from the bank. Now this loan could be in two ways. It could be from a formal sector or from an informal sector. We'll see later how this works. Now banks are the formal sector from where you can take the loans. What is happening here is, you have, let's say I am taking a loan to establish an industry, I take the loan from a bank at an interest rate of 6% and my industry is working very nicely. So what would happen? In less than a year, I repay my loan, and when I am repaying the loan, what all I am paying? I am paying the principal amount that I had taken from the bank plus the interest for the 6 months that the bank has charged to me. And when I repay the principal and the interest, I am done with my loan and I do not have any other liabilities with me. However, in this case, what would happen? Since my industry is doing well, I would definitely benefit from the loan. But let's take another example. The another example could be a case of agricultural farmer. This farmer takes the loan for the cropping season. However, let's say due to drought or severe weather conditions, the crop were not good and the farmer was not able to repay the loan. As a result, farmer went higher into the debt. So he was not able to repay the loan. As a result, the debt with the farmer increased, and when you have debt that increased, you would have the farmer would take higher time to repay the loan that has been collected over the period, and he would be finally pushed into further credit or further loan situation. And this technically happens predominantly with the informal sector, where you have a very high rate of interest and farmer is not able to repay that higher rate of interest. However, it can take place in other situations due to failure of crop or due to some unforeseen conditions, even in the formal sectors. Now let's understand how loan works or how the principle works. So as we said, when you are repaying the loan, it's the interest that you have over the period. For 6 months, it was, in this case we talked about 6 months, so it was the interest and the principal amount, and when you repay the complete interest and the principal amount, you have the repayment of loan and you are no more under any credit situation. Now what are collaterals? Collaterals are any asset or security that you provide in lieu of the loan that you want to take. So let's say a kid of 5 years goes to a bank and asks for a loan. Will he be given a loan? He won't be given loan for an obvious reason that he cannot provide any collateral. That means he cannot provide any security stating that in a period of 1 year I would be able to repay my loan because either this is my source of income or I have some established infrastructure which I can give as a security to the bank. Therefore, collaterals are essential and collaterals are not provided to everyone. If I want to go to a bank for a loan, and let's say I have one house with me, I have one car with me, and I have, let's say, some other securities with me in form of fixed deposits. So if I bring all these to the bank and say, in lieu of all these, I want a loan for, let's say, 2 lakh rupees, then bank would definitely offer the loan, considering the fact that if I am unable to repay this 2 lakh rupees, I would either my house could be seized or my FD could be seized. That means there is some collateral or guarantee that you are providing, and that is what is collateral. Now this collateral is difficult for, let's say, a weaver or an agricultural farmer to produce. So what happens in that cases we will see in the later class, in the later section of this class. Now the next thing is, what are the terms of credit? There are certain things that you must be clear about when you talk about terms of credit. The first is the interest rate that is being charged. Now what would happen if the interest rate is very, very high? If the interest rate is, say, let's say 25%. So if I am taking a loan of 10,000 rupees and I am paying an interest rate of 25%, that means I am paying nearly 12,500 rupees, and at the end of the day, if I am establishing an industry and I am earning out of this as 13,000, what would be the percentage of my profit or the margin of my profit? This margin would remain only 500 rupees. However, if this interest, the same interest was, let's say, 5%, what would happen? If this interest was 5%, or let's say 10% to simplify again, what would happen? I would have 10,000 and 100 as the total amount that I would be paying. So what would happen is, I would have 1100 as the total amount that I would be paying, and because of that I would have a profit margin of 2000 rupees, and this profit margin would be much higher. So the interest rate is a predetermined factor for getting a good credit, because if I am looking for credit, I would obviously look for a credit where I have lower interest rate as a borrower. Now this is very important, what the borrower goes for and what a depositor goes for. But if I have extra money in hand, I would be looking for higher interest rate, because I could get more returns on the amount that I have deposited with the bank. And since I am borrowing here, I would be looking for lower interest rates, since I will have to repay a lesser amount. So interest rate, collaterals that we have already talked about, all the documentations that you need to produce collaterals and your identity, plus the mode of repayment. How would you repay the amount? Would it be in the form of cash or check? Or all these come under the terms of credit. So this is how we understand the terms of credit. Now as we said, credit could be either by the formal sector or the informal sector. Formal sector is mainly the banks. So you have kind of banks or cooperative societies which are the formal sector, and you have 90% of the rich household who take credit only through the formal sector. However, the poor households, 85% of them take loan through the informal sector, because for them it is hard to produce a collateral to the bank. As a result, what they do, they either go to money lenders, traders, employers, relatives or friends, and they take loan from them. And for the loan that they are taking from an informal sector, they are usually charged much higher as compared to the formal sector. Now this formal sector is supervised by RBI in India. And what does RBI look into? The RBI looks into the cash that the bank is maintaining with itself, and again to make sure that it is not only providing loan for the profit making businesses, but also providing loans to startups and to those who can repay the loan and really require it. So it should not be only for a kind of profit making business that you are providing the loan. So these are two things that RBI looks into while providing kind of permission for the formal sector to produce loans. Now as we said, when there is high borrowing cost, that means most of the money goes for loan repayment and you have lesser profit margins. So what is required is a need for cheap and affordable credit, and this comes through either self-help groups or cooperative societies, and 50% of the rural credit needs are fulfilled by the formal sector now. Now what do self-help group do? Self-help groups are small groups which organize together. So let's say there is a village and 80 or 100 people of the village come together. They all collect their money under a single head, and whenever all those 100 people are putting in the money for that self-help group, now let's say person one wants a money or loan, so he would ask that group to provide a loan, and then he would be repaying that amount in certain time, let's say 1 year or 2 years. Now when this self-help group gets bigger, what happens is, it's established for 1 or 2 years, it can establish itself with the bank, and when there is a bank, it is being associated, it acts as a regular saving account in the name of that self-help group with the bank, and whenever a person is taking loan from the self-help group, that is that loan is ultimately taken from the bank in the name of the self-help group. So it provides kind of self-employment opportunities to small workers and marginal workers. It overcomes the problem of collaterals, because all these 100 people who are coming together, who are involved in small household activities might not provide sufficient collateral to the bank. Excellent example of this was the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, which started in 1970s, and now there are 6 million borrowers and it is spread in more than 40,000 villages. So this is how you reach to every nook and corner of the rural household. Now when we are talking about banks, there are some terms in credit that are indispensable to know. Now the first one is, let's understand the basic differences between the terms that you have frequently heard: repo rate, reverse repo rate, cash reserve ratio, SLR, and so on. So let's talk about them one by one. When RBI lends money to the bank, that is known as repo rate, and it is called as repo rate when it is in short term. However, if RBI is lending money to the bank for long duration, you call it bank rate. So the first thing you are clear about is repo rate and bank rate. The next thing to understand is, sometimes RBI borrows money from the banks, and that money that RBI is borrowing from the bank is known as reverse repo rate. So you have repo rate, bank rate, reverse repo rate. So all three concepts are working between the RBI and the bank. Now the next is the MSF, that is marginal standing facility, and that explains that RBI is lending money to the bank in cases of acute shortage. So either there is some kind of emergency situation that needs to be fulfilled, the bank takes the MSF or the marginal standing facility, and under that the rate of marginal standing facility is much higher as compared to the repo rate, because the bank is in acute need for the loan, so for the money. So what RBI does is, RBI provides the bank with that money only in case of acute shortage, and when such thing happens, we call it as marginal standing facility. So these are the four terms first of all. The next is, sometimes bank provides the money to the brokers, and these brokers further provide the money to the lenders or the borrowers. So rather than directly providing the money to the borrower, there is a kind of intermediary stage where you have bank providing the money to the broker and broker then providing it to the borrower. So when bank is providing the money to the broker, it is known as call money rate. That's the next term, that's the fifth term, you call it call money rate. Now next is, what is the difference between CRR and SLR? Cash reserve ratio is the ratio that bank holds or deposits as the cash with the RBI. So let's say I have earned, or the bank has earned 100 rupees and the CRR is at a rate of 9%. So that means of this 100, 9 rupees would be deposited with the RBI. So the bank is left with only 91 rupees now, and the bank can then use only this 91 rupees to lend the money to the borrowers or the brokers. So this money, the money that the bank can use to lend would be only 91. So that's the first thing, that's the cash reserve ratio, and it is the amount that bank holds with the RBI in form of cash. The next is statutory liquidity ratio, we also call it SLR. SLR is the main part of NDTL. Now NDTL talks about the net deposits and the time liabilities. We'll see in a minute how it works. And when it's trying to maintain the part of NDTL, it tries to maintain the liquid asset in the form of either gold, cash, or kind of some approved securities. Now what is this NDTL? ND means the net deposits and TL means the time liabilities. So when I say net deposits, it's in the form of savings or current account, where whatever I have in bank, I can withdraw that anytime. So let's say I have 20,000 rupees in my bank account. So out of this 20,000, I can withdraw the amount, amount up to 20,000 anytime, and that is what is net deposit. When it comes to time liabilities, it is in the form of fixed deposits. That means I had saved 20,000 rupees, but I had booked a fixed deposit for that 20,000 rupees for a period of 10 years. When I had booked a fixed deposit for a period of 10 years, what happens? My money that I have put in here is blocked for 10 years and I can wait for 10 years to get the money back, or I'll have to break this fixed deposit and there would be some kind of loss that would occur. So time liabilities is associated with certain time periods. So in this case the time period is 10 years. So statutory liquidity ratio talks about maintaining the net deposits and the time deposits with the bank, and if the SLR is higher, that means it is restricting the bank to pump in money into the economy. So less money would go into the economy if there is higher SLR. Now in simple terms, if I want to explain this, I can say if the CRR, SLR or the repo rates are cut down, what would happen? The deposit rates, lending rates and the loan rates may fall. As a result, there would be rise in the money supply, there would be more growth, there would be higher liquidity and more purchasing power that would come up. So for a common people, we can say it is good to have a lower SLR, CRR and a lower repo rate. So these are some of the few important concepts that you must understand or must know when you are talking about the banking concepts. With this we cover chapter 3. We will be talking about more chapters in economics in the further lessons. You can subscribe to our channel for any doubts in the upcoming videos. You can leave those as comment. We will be more than happy to solve any doubts that you have.